What did you make of what happened when these ballots came in?
What happened is that we had what people have been talking about for a long time, which is an uptick dramatic in terms of young voters. This wasn't a race necessarily between Bruce and, I would say, Katie. This was actually a turnout issue, which had said we had that large number of older voters over the age of 35 that ended up voting in the first, say, 10 days at the most when the ballots were delivered. But near the end here, we've had like this huge, in fact, I just drove around just to take a look at ballot boxes on Election Day, and there were just strings of young people in line that were there. So I have to say it's pretty safe to say we had an uptick in young voters that cast let's put it this way. Katie Wilson seemed more like the kind of person these young people have been talking about in regards to the politics of change. So I think that's what happened. It's those young voters got out of bed, voted in time, and lo and behold, this is what we have.
So what do we have, Kathy? What do the next 4 years look like? I don't think we've ever had a mayor, at least, with the designation of Democratic Socialist.
No, we haven't. And as a matter of fact, I'm not so sure that she's going to rely on that. I think what she'll do is use that to rally what is the young vote that will become part of her legacy, that I think that we will see more young people in her actual administration. I think we'll see more policy talk to those under the age of 35. And I think it's about time. I think it's the kind of change that when you say you want, you never think it's going to happen. And so when you see young voters showing up in these numbers like they did, well, I think that the people who are in office are going to have to take track of that.
Let's talk about Katie Wilson. Major criticism of her has been she has very little experience. Is that kind of what helped her?
I think more than anything, what it was her age, frankly, even her look. That obviously we know what's coming with Bruce Harreld. We've had him for over a dozen years, and we know his politics. And it's pretty middle of the road. And when it comes right down to it, even progressive, he used to be the progressive one than when we first voted him in. In terms of this, she, by contrast, talks more about homelessness. She talks more about what kind of affordability is in front of us. And those are things that resonate with young people far more than older people. And so from that, I think that that's what we see here is a kind of a direction nod towards this next generation of leadership that is emerging here.
Clearly, in the city of Seattle, Democrats run the show. Take us behind the scenes. Is there a divide between the Harreld types and the Wilson types? And if so, how does that look?
It doesn't look to me like it's going to be much of a divide, only because those city council members that are coming in, I mean, we have two really pretty progressive city council members to join them that obviously when you end up replacing people, like Sarah Nelson, the head of our city council. The fact is that you have both, in this case, Erica Evans as well as Dion Foster that are going to be there to help along with actually Alexis. And so all these, we have young women coming in. They're going to be joining a young woman mayor. And the fact that it was only 0.7% of 1% that was a win, they're not going to go stray too far off the mat here because there's an awful lot of folks that are going to be watching them. So where newness is important, there's also the challenge that, what's likely to happen in the next 4 years is not very much. I mean, building coalitions and getting the on-the-job training is not something that most of us political consultants advise. We say you start with school board and move up. In this case, what happens is that we have people who are taking charge, and in most cases, they're taking charge like 30 days before the end of the year. This is going to be kind of an interesting transition time.
Our Luke Ducey was covering this yesterday, and something that raised his eyebrows was the fact Wilson told reporters that Seattleites should not expect she can achieve everything she promised. Is that a strange message right out of the chute?
Yeah, you mean something truthful? Oh, that's interesting. I can only tell you that indeed that is the case. And I found that very mature to say something like that. It shows a little bit more honesty and a little less political spin. And even though we love that political spin, what happens in so many of these cases is that, they're realistic. That is one thing you can look at with younger voters. They're not so likely just to say what they want to hear. What they're likely to do is tell truth. And I know this, having been a university professor, that sometimes the honesty is painful, but it is, in this case, I think, refreshing.
Cathy, I'm not even talking about conservatives, but moderates. What is their takeaway here? What do you see for them, and how do you think they should be feeling right now?
I can only tell you I was with some yesterday, and it was very funny because all of a sudden I could see my very middle of the road folks. All of them had been, mostly all of them had been Bruce Harrell voters. And what happened is that they're saying, well, actually, I am a pretty socialist-leaning Democrat. I'm like, what? Since when? And what happened is that in many of these cases already I hear older voters who are Democrats say, well, there's a lot of this stuff that's really pretty good when it comes to the kinds of change we probably need to be able to tackle problems we have not begun to solve yet, like homelessness, like affordability, even in terms of the more moves towards public transit. So all of this looks to me like, well, could be an opportunity for change, which, by the way, we don't usually say the day after an election. We say the people may have changed, but the system is very much entrenched. And that entrenchment is not something you just change by a person who's elected. You have to change an entire system. All those people who work at City Hall, they're not necessarily leaving. And so from all this, the important part for me is let's wait and see. I'm anxious to see what could happen.
Cathy Allen, Democratic strategist of Seattle. Thank you, Cathy.